The Knicks went to the Valley of the Sun and pulled out a 138-122 win. Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns looked like the 1A and 1B duo that they're meant to be. The team had an explosive 44-point first quarter to carry them to victory, and much more right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And I wanted to remind you guys that your favorite team podcast now has a newsletter, introducing the Locked On Knicks Daily Newsletter, one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Knicks newsletter. And I wanted to also thank you guys for making us part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode. We are here for you guys 5 days a week, sometimes more if the situation calls for it. I'm Alex Wolfe. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at strick.land. And he's Gavin Schall, favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And yesterday, Gavin, your favorite credentialed media member at the Knicks game. So that was cool. So the Knicks win 138-122. They went absolutely bonkers in the first quarter, and then at sometimes beyond that. But what was the experience like in person, and what did you glean from seeing this team in the flesh?
Yeah, it was amazing being in that pregame Tibbs press conference, sitting maybe 4 or 5 spots away from Mike Breen and Jamal Crawford, who I didn't get to watch, but I heard did a great job at his MSG debut. So shout out to Jamal. He passed me the mic for my first question to Tibbs, so that was cool. Yeah, it was insane. It was kind of surreal when you're talking. Weirdly, maybe because I didn't talk to any of the players, but like being like a few feet away from Tibbs after 6 years of doing this was like, oh yeah, we spent a weird amount of my life thinking about you, and you haven't spent any part of your life thinking about me. But hey, that's what we chose to do for a living. As far as the game itself, it was insane. I don't know what it is. Over the years, because I went to a little unnecessary background. I went to college in Arizona, so I saw a lot of Knicks Suns games over the years, and they always seem to be crazy. And it's either the Suns like blowing the Knicks out or the Knicks blowing the Suns out. And last year we got the Jalen game where he dropped 50 and went 9 for 9 from 3. And of course, what does Jalen Brunson do but pick up exactly where he left off, making his first 3 threes. So that by my count was at least 12 straight threes in the building. I did not go back to see his previous road game here and see if it was even longer than that, but at least 12 straight threes in the building. And like this team just played like a perfect offensive first quarter. Like that was my biggest takeaway. I think they started off 13 of 14 from 2-point range, at least 4 of 4 from 3, maybe 5 of 5 from 3. And like this was kind of the first game that we, like starting with that first quarter and continuing throughout, we got to see the vision of the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, right? Which is 2 guys, like obviously you'll caveat it, like last game was the Wizards, this game was a very depleted Suns team, but like at their best, like 2 guys that are just unstoppable offensively. And even on a night where like the Knicks had their defensive lapses and like we're pretty inconsistent on that end of the floor, they still win by 16, probably could have won by close to 30 with a little more intensity. And like if they clean up the defense in any meaningful way, like they could be a contender, because Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns are just that good and that unstoppable at their best.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, they really popped in this game to me. I mean, obviously Brunson carried early. The just insane shot making he was doing. And I mean, I gotta say, like, poor Ryan Dunn, this kid, I mean, really good defender. I'm very envious of the fact that the Suns got him in the draft when they did. I remember we were there on draft night, and I think even we were like, geez, like that would have been a really good pick for the Knicks. Because there was concerns about his shooting, but his shooting seems to be coming around. But he's a very talented defender for someone who is just entering the NBA. Like pretty much everyone that we spoke to in the draft cycle this year was like, this kid is like the most NBA ready defender. He's going to be able to step on an NBA court day one and defend some of the best wings and have no problems. And the Suns and Budenholzer, decided to try to follow the script of like, how do you disrupt Jalen Brunson? It's like you put a slightly bigger defender on him that can keep up with him, and that can sometimes be enough to take him out a little bit. And they were throwing like very hard doubles at him, which other teams have been doing, and yet he still ends up with 36 and 10. Which is insane because at times, especially later in the game, it looked like they actually did sort of make him uncomfortable a little bit. But it didn't matter because he was able to do so much damage early to this team that was doing everything they could to stop him, that, a few missed shots down the stretch, everybody else picked him up. Cat picked him up, and Hart and Mikal and OG picked him up. Like, I just thought it was a phenomenal game for him. And then, just for the Cat duo too. Cat also with 34 points, 10 rebounds, 12 and 19 shooting, 3 of 8 from 3, that, low for him, I guess, to only take 8 threes and make 3 of them, but still, by normal human standards, a really good game from 3. And then 7 of 8 from the free throw line. I thought they did a really good job of utilizing that combo, working that pick and roll and pick and pop. And especially in that first quarter, which, I mean, we'll talk a little more about in the next segment, but just really swinging the ball around like crazy. And, they got away from that a little bit down the stretch, which is probably the one thing that I would say this team has to work on a little bit, is keeping that same ball movement and everything throughout the whole game, rather than just kind of coming out super strong with it and then eventually reverting to like, okay, well, now we have to burn a little more clock. So let's start isoing a little more. Let's start burning more clock on each possession, which then just puts you in the hole of like, well, now you got to get into your action later. It gives you less time to move the ball around the perimeter, less time to find that really good shot. Like, I hope that they eventually hit that point where they just kind of start doing that for the whole game, and playing like they did in this first quarter for the entire game. Because I think down the stretch, when the Suns made some of their little runs here and there, it was because the Knicks were just kind of abandoning their offensive philosophy a little bit. It led to, sloppy offensive possessions, which was then leading to transition opportunities for Phoenix and stuff like that. So hopefully they're able to kind of tighten that up a little bit. But on the overall, it's just a great game for the star pairing, and just a great game for the whole starting 5. And, we'll talk about in a minute too, the minutes distribution and stuff. Another high minute game for all of their, all their biggest players. And not as much reprieve from the bench. Like, getting Deuce back is going to be really big. And especially getting Precious Achiuwa back at a certain point will be really big for this team too. But for now, as long as they can keep this up, I thought that it was a really good game for everybody.
Yeah, I think it was. I've 100% said this line on the show before, so at some point I gotta like throw my cards down and rank them. But I thought this was about as good of a half of a basketball as I've seen Jalen Brunson play. He finished the first half with 23 points, 7 assists, and like honestly, like two-way, it was a near perfect first half. Like, there were a couple of plays where he got switched onto Devin Booker and like weirdly competed as well as OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, maybe even better than Mikal Bridges was guarding Booker, because that was sort of the one thing keeping the Suns in. But the really encouraging thing to me was like, and I guess this started with like that game winner against the Nets, but that he's hitting those jab, no dribble threes. And that's when he's in a rhythm, when he's coming out of the locker room and just catch and shoot, guy in his face, like, doesn't even phase him. And we were talking coming out of that Bulls game, I think it was a 4-game stretch where he was something like 4 for 20 from 3. And then he proceeded to go 3 for 8 in the first Nets game, 0 for 5 in the second Nets game. And we were like, still like, I think you asked me if I was worried. I was like, no, not really, just because we have such a long sample size of this guy being a great shooter. But like, at that point, like, the 3-point shot was hovering around like, I don't know, like mid to like semi-high 30s. Now it's all the way up to 40% on the season. He's 12 for 20, which is 60% on obviously super high volume over the last 2 games. And like, again, like he's cooking on the catch. He's cooking off the dribble. The passing is as good as I've ever seen it for Jalen Brunson. And of course, like, having Towns inevitably makes him a better passer. His like biggest weakness as a passer is that he's not super tall, can't always see over defenses. So of course it helps a lot when the defense is really spread out. And even though, to your point, he's consistently seeing like defenders that range from like 6'5" to like 6'9", he's able to find passing lanes. And we see him like constantly like jumping and throwing passes from his hip. Like he had a great one in this game where like he was just coming up in transition. I think he ultimately, I can't remember if he hit Hart or Bridges, but just like an insane wraparound pass on Dunn, who to your point did like a great job gamely defending him. Like you see him like dragging double teams out and like whipping cross court passes to OG in the opposite corner, which was definitely something that stood out to me more in person, like than on TV. Just like someone at that size through all that height, like one, finding the passing lane, two, just like the ability to put velocity on the ball. Like that is next level, like primary stuff that you're looking for. Like he was great this entire game. Like hit Mikal Bridges on one like late shot clock where he had to like pump fake, double pump under a guy, and then Mikal hit like a fader going against two guys. That was a big thing for the first quarter offense that Bridges was playing confident. We'll talk about that in just a sec. Towns, I have my issues defensively. We'll get into it, but his ability to like it's almost like a scoring big man AI where he just like sort of like scans his opponent, and then you see on his little like Dragon Ball Z power radar thing like 8 weaknesses to attack, and like he just it depends on who's in, but like Yusuf Nurkic is in the game. He's like, all right, great, I'm gonna go get a first step on him, and then when I get to the rim, like in person, it's like Micah Parsons rushing a quarterback where he's just bending the edge and like tilting his body to get around a big, and you see like other guys like Nurkic, who's a fairly mobile 7-footer, not able to keep up with him, not able to stop him from getting all to the rim. Like he really is like a guard on offense, and it's incredible that somehow that flexibility just doesn't really translate to the defensive end. And then he has someone like Oso Ighodaro on him, who's like a really athletic rookie, but is like real thin, and catches over and over again, like driving, pivoting one way, throwing a jump hook on him, like throwing his shoulder into his body, like shoving him under the rim, like whether it's physicality, whether it's touch, whether it's just throwing his weight around, like he is able to find a way to go at bigs. And to your point, on a night where he didn't even shoot well, like it felt like a very like casual, like 34-point game for him. And like, again, this is the vision. Like those two were like, pretty much could have won this game by themselves, even if no one else was cooking. And because everyone else was, it was one of the better first quarters and one of the better scoring games we've seen from this team.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I want to talk more about that first quarter and get into what made it so great. And so let's come back in just a second and talk about that crazy 44-point first quarter. But first, I wanted to let you all know about our friends over at Game Time. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And I've been using Game Time and Game Time Picks a lot lately. I've been keeping my eyes out. I'm being a little picky about where I want to sit and how much I want to spend and everything else. And that's fine because Game Time is great. It's like the best app for last minute ticket purchasing, which is exactly how I like to roll. And it also gives me all-in pricing, which allows me to see the total price up front, including fees and everything else. There's no surprises at checkout. I'm trying to go to Knicks Mavs next week when the Knicks visit Dallas, because I will also be in Dallas during that time visiting some friends for Thanksgiving. So we'll see. Hopefully I'm able to get some good tickets, but the only app I have faith in at this point to make that happen is Game Time, because it treats me so good at home too. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Gavin, we're back in to keep talking through this fantastic Knicks win. And that first quarter was amazing. 44 points for the Knicks to 28 for the Suns. And it seemed like, I mean, the Suns made a little mini run towards the end that kind of narrowed it a little bit. It seemed like the Knicks were going to be up by like 30 after a quarter for a minute there, because they were just scoring at will. They were getting out in transition, which I thought was fantastic. There was like, I don't know if they were exactly consecutive, but there was a possession where Hart hit OG on the break, and then where Mikal hit OG on the break, and then I think where was it Brunson hit Mikal or something like that. There's just like 3 straight really good transition possessions that they hit after playing some good defense, getting their hands in passing lanes, forcing turnovers, and they had 4 steals in the quarter as well, which was huge towards that production. 14 assists. They were just moving the ball insane. Brunson had 6 assists all to himself. Josh Hart had 4. I mean, it was to me probably the best. No, this isn't a probably. It was absolutely the best quarter that the Knicks have had this season, and probably the best quarter that they've played. This maybe is the one where I'd have to really stretch my brain back, but I think this is possibly the best quarter that they've played since we've been doing this podcast, which dates back to late 2018. So I mean, this was, if you want to look at like what the potential of this team is, this quarter was it. Like, just crisp ball movement. Everybody knew where everybody was going to be, finding each other for threes and hitting them, like 72.7% on their threes, 8 of 11 in the quarter, and 78% just overall shooting, 18 of 23. And yet it didn't feel outlierish. You know, like sometimes you watch a team and you see them hitting those shots, and like, I mean, I go through these mental gymnastics in my head all the time where you kind of go like, oh, I can't do that forever. You know, like, oh, like the Knicks will be fine. You know, that team just got hot in the first quarter or whatever. And obviously we've seen twice this year with the Celtics game and then the one Pacers game where, you know, you think those things and then you go, and then suddenly they do it for a whole game and you go, oh crap, I guess they can do it the whole game. And that was sort of, you know, I was sort of expecting the other shoe to drop at a certain point in this game. And it did in a way. Like the Knicks had to kind of struggle at times to keep the Suns at arm's length and keep them in the double-digit hole. And yet they did it, and they managed to win the game. And it was largely just because this first quarter, I think, set such a good precedent with how well they were moving the ball, the type of shots that they were generating, and the lead it allowed them to get. But as I alluded to last segment, I think what we really need to start seeing is them doing this for all 4 quarters, because the only times that the Knicks struggle anymore, I think, is when they start getting into ISO ball at all.
Yeah, I think you nailed it in that their ability to get out in transition, I think is the separator, because the half court offense has been so efficient this year. We've seen them play faster, but that hasn't always translated into like a lot of like easy fast break buckets, which we were seeing more so this preseason. And then for whatever reason kind of died down in the regular season. They were able to force a bunch of turnovers. Like, it's like Tom Tibbs was talking about this post game, but like it really did start with their defense. And then I think like this sounds obvious, but like when everyone is confidently shooting the basketball, like I don't really know how you guard this team. Like Mikal's ability to like it's again start off with his defense. Like he had a play where he swatted done, I think got it to Hart, sprinted the floor, got the ball back, hit a wing 3. I mentioned that play where Jalen hit him in transition, like over and over again. Like Mikal was like a play starter in stealing the ball. Like he had another one where he anticipated a wing pass perfectly, ended up getting it to OG for like a cross court lob for a dunk. Like he was a play starter, and he was like very often on the tail end of Jalen Brunson passes as a play finisher. I saw OG Anunoby out like 2 hours before the game. Like it was just him in campaign, and he was just like bombing 3 after 3 after 3. And I was watching him, I was like, you know what? Like I'm actually like, he looks a little off tonight. Like I'm wondering if he's gonna have a cold game. And then of course comes out like 2 different between the legs, step back, wing 3s to open the game. And like, to me, like that is a very clear like transformation from OG for last year. Next time we talk to Sean Woodley, like I've got to ask him about it and say, like, was this something he was doing in Toronto? Because when he was on the Knicks, maybe it just took him a little while to get confident, but we didn't really see him like seeking out like off the dribble creation 3s. And look, he's not James Harden, right, doing the double step back, but like he has a little bit of a bag now. He's super confident shooting it off the dribble. He's clearly putting time into it. And that is just like another element that takes his offense up another level. And then to me, the single biggest thing is that like we've seen Josh Hart, and like not that like this was like necessarily a big first quarter thing. This is something I noticed more throughout the game, but like that he is genuinely pretty confident in his shot. Like it happened once in this third quarter, but like I've noted maybe twice now over the last 5 games where he's passed up a 3, where that was happening twice a game early season. It was neutering the Knicks offense. Like now he's like a totally willing shooter. It's opening his game up off the dribble. Tibbs after the game like said like he basically spent his whole summer working on his shot, poured a ton of time into it. Like he knew that it was going to be an X factor and how far the Knicks could go this year. And like that's showing. And like even if the Knicks hadn't made any trades, that was always something that was going to take the Knicks offense to another level. If you're going to play in big minutes, like he's shooting with abandon, and like you have 5 guys who are super confident, and like 2 of, again, at their best, like arguably top like 10 to 12 offensive players on planet Earth. It's going to look really good against the Phoenix Suns without Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal.
Yeah, and Josh Hart now, to your point, up to 35% this season from three. I think that's all he has to get to.
Yeah.
Like all he has to do is just get respect. Like, and 35% is like, that's like the Mendoza line of 3-point shooting. That's where if you hit that, I feel like you can get respect if you're a wing player, and he's shooting that and looking like he's trending towards potentially shooting better than that as the year goes on, because I think his shot, he was passing them up a little bit earlier on, and now to your point, he's shooting them much more confidently, just kind of stepping right into them, not thinking twice. You can see, like, especially with Josh Hart, the gears turning are not hard to see. Like it's very noticeable when he gets the ball, like where you can see his processing and whether he's overthinking a shot or whatever the case may be. Seeing less and less of that as we go on, and that started early in this game, and then continued throughout the entire game. But he hit one of those 2 3-pointers in the first quarter. Again, super efficient, 2 of 3 shooting. Granted, everybody shot basically. Well, actually, shooting 2 of 3 meant that he brought the team down in the first quarter. So, do better, Josh Hart. You're only shooting 2 of 3. We need at least 3 of 4 if we want to keep that field goal percentage up. Although that would have brought them down too. All right, really, 3 of 3 or 4 of 4 or bust. If you miss a shot, you're getting on the bench, buddy. You can't afford to miss one shot in the first quarter if you're going to have a quarter like this. But at any rate, I one thing that I really liked that I want to talk more about is the Jalen Brunson and campaign dynamic, which I think has been sort of forced by the Deuce injury a little bit. And yet I think campaign is doing himself a lot of favors as far as holding on to a more consistent rotation spot once Deuce gets back, at least a little higher minutes, and maybe giving some of these starters a little more of a rest. So I want to talk about that in a moment, plus some other notes. I actually do want to talk about Jamal Crawford a little bit too, because I thought he was really good. So we can get into all that in just a moment.
We've all hit a point where we realized it was time to make serious money moves. Take control of your finances by using a Chime checking account with features like no maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Learn more at chime.com. I love the 2 days early with direct deposit. It is a transition I have made at my various places of employment. A lot of times when you're working in media, you're doing freelance, you're working more than one job. It makes a big difference to your state of mind to get that direct deposit a little bit earlier. So join millions of Chime members who are working on financial progress. Chime helps you make progress with fee-free overdraft up to $200. Your next deposit is applied to your balance. So get spotted on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. No monthly fees or maintenance fees over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. To date, Chime has spotted members over $30 billion. Friends give friends a boost. Eligible members get a complimentary boost to temporarily increase a friend's spot me limit. So when you give a boost, they can boost you back to temporarily raise your limit. So how does it work? You set up direct deposit in your Chime account. After a qualifying deposit of $200 or more, Chime will notify you to enroll in Spot Me with an activated debit card. Chime will spot you up to $200 when you exceed your balance. Your next direct deposit is applied to your negative balance. Chime never charges fees or interest for using Spot Me. So make your fall finances a little greener by working towards your financial goals with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/NBA. That's chime.com/NBA. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Spot Me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Boosts are available to eligible Chime members enrolled in Spot Me and are subject to monthly limits. Terms and conditions apply. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details. All right, we've talked through the good. We're going to get to a little. I don't want to say bad, but a little dicey, and then we will circle back around to good. Alex, I wanted to talk really quick before we get into the Jalen Brunson campaign dynamic that was so good for the Knicks. The Knicks defense in this one, because in person, when the Suns were making a spirited comeback and occasionally getting this game, like to the point like you were pulling your collar and starting to sweat a little bit. It was the decision to double Devin Booker. And now, like, I don't necessarily think this is the wrong decision with no Bradley Beal on the floor, with no Kevin Durant on the floor. Obviously, there's not that major other threat you have to be aware of, and you want to do everything possible to take Booker out of the game. And I was at the previous Suns game where they played the Orlando Magic, and Orlando was super successful, smothering the Suns offense by doubling Book. Like, he looked pretty disinterested. He has had a very weird start to his season where he's had long stretches of not being very aggressive. And I think the Knicks were playing into that. Whatever Mike Budenholzer's done with him, like, I don't know if he went to therapy, if they got a hypnotist in, like he's got his swagger back. Like, he he was very confident operating against the Knicks double teams. Like, it felt like he saw red every time they put Mikal Bridges at him. He was trying to put his shoulder into Bridges' chest. But more importantly, like, a lot of times when he was doubled, like, he was passing out of it, and the Knicks were not doing a very good job rotating off the ball. This has been kind of a continuous theme with this team early season, where the defensive communication, even between their best defenders, like OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, botched another double that ultimately led to an open three in the fourth quarter of this one. But they just consistently did not make the right rotations. And it was something I asked Tom Thibodeau. I was like, how did you feel like you did? And he's like, look, some of this is inevitable, right? When you have a great scorer like Devin Booker, you are forced to double at times, and the Suns are very good at making you pay because their whole offense is counting on, like, hey, you're going to double Durant, you're going to double Booker, maybe on the right now you're going to double Beal, and we have a bunch of guys who are unselfish, like Mike Budenholzer's turned them into a really good passing team. So to some extent, you tip your hat to the Suns. My logic was like, all right, OG Anunoby's was doing a really good job on Book. It was similar to Paul George, where, like, at times Book was just making tough shots. Like, I would trust that a little bit, maybe have some softer doubles and just be able to recover. I think the biggest thing Tibbs got across, though, post-game is, like, it's about ultimately, like, stunting to the right guys, and you have to know who are the shooters, who are the non-shooters, and the Knicks did not always make the right decisions. Again, it's a little harder on a night where someone like Yusuf Nurkic hits 3 threes, because that should be the right decision, right, to give that guy a three versus letting Devin Booker go at you. But I just think that's something to clean up going forward for the Knicks.
Yeah, I've noticed the same thing with regards to communication. I mean, a lot of times you can even like, I did notice one guy who is doing it well, at least from what from what we can glean from TV broadcasts and whatever, is Josh Hart. Like, they had him mic'd up the other day, and you could hear how much he talks on defense and how much he's communicating what's going on and sort of quarterbacking things to a degree. I think that's what's missing, is just maybe even beyond just the talking, because sometimes you can't yell things out because then you're tipping your hand as far as what you're doing on defense. It's more just these guys need to learn exactly what to do in every scenario for every single thing. And I think that, like, the big thing, to your point, is they switch to doubles sometimes, and they have guys that are capable of executing doubles and can definitely do it and, do it well. But the big thing is they don't then have the rotations after that quite figured out just yet. And that's something where, I mean, that might also play into why Tibbs, other than Tibbs just loving his starters more than any other player on the team right now, that might play into why he's been playing them as much as he has been, is trying to get that chemistry there with that core group, because you could just see it sometimes where they execute like a pretty good double and it seems like it should work, and yet then that last rotation just isn't there, and that's where they get burnt. And to your point, like, yeah, it resulted in some Nurkic threes in this one. Like, I personally, I would give Nurkic that shot all day. Like, I was watching that and I was just like, yeah, this is abnormal. Like, I don't think that this guy is normally going to hit 3 threes in a game. I mean, he shoots, for his career, like, he once shot 40% on 0.8 threes per game, but for the most part, he's like a 27 to 30% 3-point shooter. Like, that's a great outcome for you as a team, if you're ultimately having a possession end in a use of Nurkic 3-point attempt. So for that, it was just bad luck. But that wasn't the only shots that they gave up that were not great out of doubles. And it's also not like it was just this game that they've been seeing that issue. It's been pretty much any time that they've gone to doubling this year, I think there's been issues with the help rotations afterwards to try to make sure that the other team is not getting an open shooter. So I definitely would love to see that cleaned up. But if we want to go back in the positive realm, I really enjoyed, I don't know, I mean, they've been working on it for a little bit, especially with Deuce out right now. But for me, for whatever reason, the Brunson and campaign dynamic, I thought really popped in this game a bit. I think it was just the fact that Phoenix was being especially aggressive guarding Brunson, and especially in the second half where it seemed to finally be getting to him a little bit. I really like the fact that Brunson, like, just the comfort level that Brunson had with saying, okay, I can see how much pressure they're throwing at me. And honestly, I mean, I don't want to put words or thoughts, words in his mouth, thoughts in his brain, but you could sort of tell it seemed like he was getting kind of weary of it at certain points in the second half and being like, I don't know if I feel like getting beat up this whole possession. And the fact that he has the comfort level now to just hand it off to Campaign and let Campaign run the offense for a possession, he looked really comfortable doing that. And, I think what's really great is you now have 3 guards in that point guard rotation that are very comfortable with or without the ball. Like, I think Campaign does a lot of good stuff off the ball as far as finding ways to space the floor effectively. I will say, he's still maybe a little more trigger happy than I would like when he gets the ball. If he's in a spot up scenario, like, he's less likely to put the ball on the floor and try to do something else or try to swing the ball again. If he gets it and he feels like he's, 80% open, like, he's going to take that shot pretty much every time, which fine. Some days he gets really hot. In this game, not as much. He only shot 2 of 6, but in general, I really enjoyed the looks where they would kind of trust Campaign to run the offense, even when Brunson was on the floor. And even though not a ton of them went in the second half, which was where I mostly noticed this dynamic playing out a little more. Brunson, I think he missed like 6 straight shots or something in the second half at one point and just went cold a little bit. But in general, the looks that Brunson was able to then get by being a spot up shooter when the defense is throwing the kitchen sink at him, I thought was really useful. It's something that the Knicks can look to build on throughout the year, and I thought popped a bit for me in this game.
Yeah, I think I'm asking for a mulligan on Campaign. I was a little reactionary early season. It's fun. It's fun when the shots are going in, and his energy, even when the shots aren't going in, is undeniable. I think his defense has been really good the last few games, just creating like a bunch of turnovers by like poking the ball away, like racing into passing lanes. Like he's been a spark, and he's kind of helped these bench units like maintain some of the fervor that the offense is bringing when the starters are in. Just a couple of odds and ends before we go. I thought it was a really good game for Mikal Bridges, maybe a little bit more comfortable playing on his old home court. 16 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. Biggest thing for me was that he hit 2 wing threes where it felt like he's hit 2 wing threes all season. Something I've been noting, I would encourage people to watch out for, is he's much more confident and he's much better taking that shot in transition. Both of them came in transition, hit one against the Nets that was also in transition. For whatever reason, I think I have 2 theories here. One, that it's mental, and like when he's on the run, he doesn't have a lot of time to think about it and it goes in. 2, like whatever the hitch is in his form, which I know you said you're not seeing anymore. I still see it sometimes a little bit. And like, I think it's been a thing that like all of his wing shots have just consistently been short. In transition, like that little bit of extra momentum from his body still moving. Maybe he's putting a little bit more into his dip, but like he's getting enough pace on it and it goes in. Also with his low 3-point percentage, I think it's worth noting, I think he's taken like every single Knicks heave, at least the last 5 games, like at the end of quarters. So that's lowering it a little bit. You take those out. Maybe he's closer to like 34% than 31%, but good 3-point shooting game for Mikal Bridges. Like really good game. Like drove a closeout for an up and under layup against a double team. Like that was encouraging because we haven't seen him do that a lot. Still want to see him play with more force. Had like one drive where like he went at Jusuf Nurkic and just threw up like a crazy like running floater instead of being patient, pulling it back out behind the arc and going at him. I asked Tom Thibodeau after the game, like, hey, what do you have to see from Pacom to play a little more? Because I'm a little concerned about the minutes. We've said it. Mikal's leading the NBA in minutes. Like Josh Hart played 39 again in a game that was like mostly a blowout. And I just kind of think Pacom's been solid when he's on the floor. Like, I'm not saying like he's great. I'm not saying he's as good as those guys, but like it doesn't feel like the typical rookie things that would stop Tom Thibodeau from playing someone, because he's been really solid defensively so far. And Tibbs made it was a very vague answer, but he in so many words basically said like, I didn't want Devin Booker to target him. And I was kind of like, you know what, based on what I've seen from him so far, like I think he'd be okay in that. But what he might have meant was more so like that he didn't trust Pacom to make those rotations where the Knicks vets were struggling those rotations, which I guess you'd say fair enough. I just think the Knicks had enough of a lead that there was a little bit of a cushion there. And then final thing for me, Josh Hart, crazy rebounding sequence at the end of the game, like twice, like stole the ball from Jusuf Nurkic. One time went like flying in, poked it away from him to get the rebound, kicked it out to Bridges. Bridges missed, and then he went up over both Nurkic and Towns, who were under the basket, and it was like a Space Jam play. Like he was just flying to put it back in. That was crazy. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot. Injury updates pregame. Mitchell Robinson is doing some on the court work, but not running yet. Precious Achiuwa is going to practice sometime this road trip. So hopefully those guys are coming back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, they definitely need those guys for sure. So I'm looking forward to them getting back in. My last thing that I want to highlight is just give kudos to Jamal Crawford. I thought he had a really good debut. which Gavin, maybe you'll get to watch a recording at some point just to experience a little bit of it. It was, I thought, a masterclass by Mike Breen, first off, to sort of softly guide him along. That you could tell there were certain moments where he didn't quite like the Clyde always narrates the bumpers, like out of in going into a commercial break where they start playing the dun 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 dun, dun that music, and Clyde will be like, oh, and there's so and so spinning and winning and dishing and swishing and blah blah blah. And it took him there was like one of those started up, and you could tell someone definitely went in Crawford's in-ear monitor, was like, Jamal, that's you. And he's like, oh yeah, all right. So Mikal running in transition, and start kind of narrating them a little bit. It was a little clunky to start, but as the game went on, I thought Breen did a really good job of getting him out of his shell. He prompted, the stories of when he was in the league, which he does with Clyde all the time, which I thought was a charming way to start kind of reacquainting fans with Jamal Crawford and stuff. Also pointing out, it was a good place for Crawford to have his first game, because he's made history both with the Knicks and with the Suns with his 50-point games with both franchises and stuff like that. So that was highlighted. By the end of the game, I could say comfortably I have a new favorite for heir apparent for Clyde. I think if Jamal Crawford is down with it, he should definitely take over if Clyde indeed is going to try to retire in the next couple years from broadcasting, which he's alluded that he's going to. And I feel like he's sort of like a Supreme Court justice or something, maybe just sort of like waiting until he thinks there's a perfect person to replace him to do it. I think Jamal Crawford might be that guy. I thought he was really good. He's has that same sort of comforting soft spokenness that Clyde does. Although he obviously, nobody's ever going to sound or narrate a game like Clyde does. He's one of a kind, but I thought Jamal Crawford did a really good job, and I hope that we see more of him. So that's my last note. But we got more games coming up here to end the week. And actually, I don't think we're going to be covering any more games by the end of the week, but certainly one more episode to close your week out. So keep your eyes out tomorrow, and then we'll have you guys covered next week going into Thanksgiving and all that good stuff. As always, 5 episodes a week. You know how it is. Also, be sure to check out LockedOnDaily.com to check out the Locked On Knicks daily newsletter, which you can check out if you want a sort of written explanation of all the things that we talk about on the show, and sometimes exclusive content. You can check that out as well. But until next time, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.